There we are.
All
Okay,
right.
so first I'll just ask to introduce yourself, your name and your age and where you live.
Sure. I'm Meg Poirier. I'm talking to you from my home office in the White Mountains of New Hampshire in Gorham. We're about 8 minutes from Mount Washington.
Oh, beautiful. And so if you feel comfortable sharing, what is your diagnosis?
Sure. I was diagnosed with primary ciliary dyskinesia when I was 32 years old through genetic testing that I pursued on my own accord. My previous diagnosis prior to that was at age 16, working with a pulmonologist at Dartmouth Hitchcock. It was determined that I had bronchiectasis with an unknown cause. And at the
Kind of
time, we didn't,
frustrating.
it's definitely frustrating. We didn't
Yeah.
pursue any genetic testing at that time. It wasn't really brought up. Um, that was in 2004, so kind of early days.
Wow. So what changed in between that initial diagnosis and when you decided to pursue genetic testing?
Sure. I think throughout high school and my 20s, I was partially invested in understanding my diagnosis of bronchiectasis. I became more and more interested in learning about it and things that I could do to live a normal life, live a healthy life, manage my symptoms, get better rather than worse as much as I could. So throughout my 20s, I sort of adopted some lifestyle changes and became more active and saw my primary care physician occasionally and a pulmonologist, but didn't dig into anything in terms of testing or didn't even know what PCD was
Hmm.
until in the early days of COVID. My brother and I were sort of discussing the fact that he was told by his doctor that he was not able to have children and that his sperm were immotile. Kind of around that same time, my husband and I were determining whether or not we were going to like continue waiting on having kids or try.
Yeah.
Um, we've always had a very adventurous life and we've done a lot of traveling, so we were like the two the couple that kept putting having kids off. Like we were just like, ah, another year.
Yeah,
Give us
yeah.
some time kind of thing. We're gonna keep on doing our crazy entrepreneurial things and keep moving around the
Traveling.
country.
Yeah.
So, but that point or that, conversation with my brother tipped me off like, it is sort of interesting that we've never had any sort of close call or, you know,
Right.
scare or anything like that.
Mhm.
And I had been married for like so many years. And anyhow, so I wanted to look into it a little bit further because there was a discussion. Part of that discussion with my brother was that it could be connected to his lungs in some way, and the fact that
Okay.
his cilia were not working. Didn't really know any more than that.
Mhm.
So I did a bunch of research on my end and read a ton of like medical journals and things. Um,
What were you researching? Were you researching his symptoms,
I
your
researched,
symptoms? Yeah, tell
sure.
me.
It was really interesting. I was using the tools that I had, which was bronchiectasis, infertility, sinus issues, ear infections.
Hmm.
Just I kind of just played around with search terms related to our
Threw it all at the wall to
experiences.
see what stuck.
Yeah, and I found a research paper about primary ciliary dyskinesia and immotile sperm and fallopian tubes. I don't know. And then yeah, so I brought that information to my primary care physician. This was in like 2019,
Hmm.
2020. And she was like, wow, this might be something we need to look into. This is very interesting. I'd like to connect you with Maine Med, their genetics department, to see
Okay.
what they think and if they have any suggested next steps.
Hmm.
So
Those research papers aren't really easy to digest. So, did you end
no,
up finding the answers in there because you couldn't find like a platform elsewhere with more approachable information on PCD?
I would have loved to find a more approachable platform. Absolutely. That had, yeah, I guess if you don't know what you don't know, it's hard to know kind of like where to start.
Right.
I would have loved a more approachable platform, absolutely,
Yeah, if you
because
didn't know to be Googling PCD, what else are you going to Google? Some
mhm,
sporadic symptoms, and which can obviously lead to other diagnoses, like what you got when you were 16.
absolutely. All I had to work with was the bronchiectasis piece,
Mhm.
which thankfully that was mentioned in so many of um, the papers that I found.
Okay.
Um, through my research, I think I found the PCD Foundation
Mhm.
and the Chess Foundation eventually.
Okay.
And a
But you
Facebook
really,
support group was
yeah,
hard.
okay, good. I was just gonna say you really had to do sleuthing to get there, a lot of your own
Mhm.
sleuthing to get there. Yeah.
I did. And I had to bring it to my pulmonologist and my primary care physician.
Yeah.
So I think if I hadn't have cared so much, I might still not have a diagnosis, but I
Mhm.
really wanted to know more about it. Um, and yeah, just not be in the dark, I guess.
Yeah. And what was your
Mhm.
experience like getting that diagnosis?
Mm. Yeah. So revisiting that diagnosis, I worked with the genetics team at um, Maine Med, and it was kind of all remote because we were in COVID at that time.
Oh,
So
yes.
they sent me a kit for um, a PCD panel specifically. So it was like just for PCD.
Got it.
And it was like a spit test,
Mhm.
sent it in and got my results sort of emailed to me, or I think it was in an app or something like that through the genetic testing company. I paid for it and called my doctor at, my connect at Maine Med to go over the results. And the results themselves were a bit, difficult to digest, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, they're not easy to decode. It's not just like
Mhm,
you have this rare
mhm.
disease. It's yeah, it's a lot to sift through.
Right. And the terminology was a bit, I just wanted to know, okay, this gene was identified. Here's what that means.
What does that mean for
Um,
me?
what does that mean for me? Is there any sort of spectrum of severity? Was one of my questions. Um, I wanted to explain, I guess, my life experience and maybe if at all that was, or like the fact that it wasn't as severe for me. I just wanted to know more, I guess.
Yeah, is
I
there
was
a
just
reason it's
given,
less severe for me, or should I expect it to become more severe? Like, what does this result mean in the context of my specific life and my specific results?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't feel as though it was the most caring exchange,
Mm.
perhaps. So I did feel quite alone after I was diagnosed because I didn't really know where to go from there.
I can
It was just
imagine.
sort
I'm
of,
sorry.
mm,
What would have been
yeah.
ideal for that to be different?
Um, I think, I guess I wanted to feel a little bit more cared for, and maybe that's sort of idealistic of me because I guess you could say that I lived my entire life until age 32-ish in the dark or not knowing that I had this condition. So
Hmm.
all of a sudden it's like, wow, this world is opened up. What does that all mean?
Uh-huh.
And
You
then
almost want
also
a
sort of,
guide then, because how do you
yeah,
start, like venture into this whole new world?
yeah, I guess you could I'd also reflect that there was a bit of a flood of emotions, like when you receive a diagnosis at
Mhm.
any age, I'm sure. Um, it's different for everyone. And for me, I was reflecting a lot about my life up until then. And, could things have been different if I knew earlier? How would I have changed X, Y, or Z? Um, so I don't know. It's not the geneticist's job, perhaps, to like field that emotional moment for you, but I kind of wanted that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, there are a number
Yeah.
of people present to help you first to sort through your result and make heads and tails of it, but second of all,
Hmm.
to translate that to a patient and help them put together
Mm,
a care plan and understand next steps. So in an ideal process like this one, you would have multiple professionals. And I'm really sorry that wasn't your experience. But you did bring up something interesting that I want to go back to, which is starting to think about what things could have been different had you known earlier, had you pursued
mm.
genetic testing earlier. Do you think things would have been different? And what do you think you would have done differently?
I think I'm still working through the answer to that question as far as what that means. It is a topic in therapy, I will say,
Mhm.
which has helped a lot, honestly, to just as like sort of a companion to my own self-reflection and working with my current doctor, being more open about it in my life now. I guess that's all I can really control. I do think that as a kid, I would have been a bit less avoidant of certain situations that would like put me in an uncomfortable position, like that would make me
Okay.
cough more because I was very protective of that. I tried to hide my PCD cough as much as I could. So there's a lot of people who knew me as a kid or as a young adult who were like, wow, I never knew anything was wrong. I never knew that that was a factor in your life. And I was like, well, I was really good at hiding it.
Yeah, that
And
was a burden
now,
that you were putting on yourself to make sure they didn't know.
100%, nobody asked me to do that. It wasn't something that was expected of me. I was just
That's heavy.
genuinely embarrassed by it. And I sound sick, like when I cough. So, and I was sick a lot too. So I feel like as a kid, probably up until my 20s, like I frequently had, bronchitis, pneumonia,
Okay.
um, infections, that kind of thing. I was like, I missed a lot of school.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I knew, maybe there would have been more preventative measures I could have taken. Like I know now as an adult how important it is to um, get my phlegm out
Mhm.
and yeah, whatever more beautiful term there is for that. I don't think there
Oh,
is
no more
one,
beautiful
but
terms. Just call it what it is. You get that
yeah,
out, you're going to feel better throughout the day.
you got to get it
Those are
out.
the things that you need to, learn. Those things aren't
Mhm.
aren't, obvious.
Yeah. That is something that once I had my diagnosis, I was able to go back to my pulmonologist or a new pulmonologist because I hadn't worked with one for a while. I was able to go back to them with this diagnosis. They were able to do a bit more research along with me and suggest certain things, to just manage the symptoms a little bit better.
Okay.
Um, so that was helpful. But yeah, I think I would have been a bit more open and as a kid if I had a diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, and how has the diagnosis, has it changed the way you pursue treatments, or have you learned anything about managing symptoms through your diagnosis?
Um, Thankfully, and I'm not exactly sure why this is the case, but I'm not really I don't have to do a lot in terms of medical treatments, which is good. I would say there's like an annual maintenance that I have to do, which is
Okay.
like take like an antibiotic once or twice a year when I just know something is up. Like you get to know your body so well. Um, so now I know that that's all I need and I'll feel better after. And sure enough, I do. And it really
Yeah,
does
good.
help. But my habits have changed quite significantly since I've gotten the diagnosis, in that it's just an underlying awareness that I have now that
Okay.
I have PCD. It's incredibly important to maintain a healthy lifestyle now more than ever. I
Mhm.
need to set a good foundation. I can't slip up. I can't, it's vital for me, I guess, now
Yeah. Yeah.
more
Well, and
than ever.
after the diagnosis and learning more about symptoms or even potential symptoms that could crop up, did that help
Mm,
you start identifying signs in yourself when, as you say, you start knowing and identifying that feeling of, ooh, sounds like I might need to take my antibiotic soon? Was that sort of like profile, I guess you'd call it, of a
mm.
PCD patient helpful for you to know in terms of managing it?
Definitely. Yeah. I think having a profile, having a list. I was reviewing some notes that I took back in 2021, even during an appointment with a pulmonologist, just of things to watch out for,
Mhm.
blood in your phlegm, or, you know, certain things that are really important to do and
Mhm.
to avoid, anything that's sort of inflammatory, etc. Things like that. I
Mhm.
think about them every day and have incorporated that into my lifestyle.
And it sounds like it's been wildly helpful. I hope.
It has, yes. And I really do look at it now, look at my diagnosis and look at just the ebb and flow of symptoms and things like that and how hard it can be. But I'm grateful that it's not harder, I guess.
Mhm.
And I'll take what I can get, I guess, and push myself as much as I can in the outdoors. Like, we're really big hikers, and I run a lot. I ran my first marathon this year.
Oh my God, that's
Gonna,
incredible.
yeah, I'm gonna do another
Congratulations.
one next year, and just keep, testing myself, but giving myself grace at the same time because I don't always feel 100%. Like some
And that's
days
important,
I have
knowing
to.
how to push your body and when to stop pushing your body.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. When I need to relax, when I'm feeling really good, certain times of day are better than others. So
Interesting.
it's been a really good, um, just learning experience, like getting in touch with your body and your breath. Um, Definitely more than ever. Like, the breath connection has been a really interesting thing to dig into. And it's like all I think about sometimes during certain runs or hikes where I'm really pushing.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's like me and
Is
my
that for
lungs,
like
and that's all that
physically it's
exists.
important to regulate your breath, or is it more of an emotional and cognitive thing?
Ooh, I would almost say both. Yeah, I think physically it's nice because it does kind of like just kind of keep you calm in like a strenuous activity. Um, but also mentally, it's like, wow, this is kind of amazing. Like, whatever your body is capable of doing that day, I'm grateful for it. And your lungs are a big part of that.
Mhm. And it draws
Mhm.
attention to that. It draws attention to, I guess, feeling grateful or
Oh,
remembering
yeah.
they're remembering what they're doing for you. So
Yeah,
this is,
definitely. At the finish line, it was like very overwhelming and fun and
gosh, I can imagine
exciting. And
the
I never
energy in
thought I
those
could do
events.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I really did. Like, if you, and I've had people who knew me in high school who knew Meagan as like a person who was not athletic, avoided that kind of thing. I was not a runner. I would say that I'm not a runner. I'm never going to be that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, to see that person like transform, I don't know,
Now it
and
sounds like a
just
huge part of your identity.
huge part
You're
of
a
my
runner.
identity. It's a huge part of my life.
Mhm.
I get so much out of it too, mentally, as well as physically. So I can't
So
imagine my
awesome.
life without it.
Mhm. What was your experience like getting back into, or into for the first time, a community of people who have experienced a similar
Mm.
disease as PCD or have PCD specifically?
Yes, that's a great question. I did try to sort of explore and engage with
Mhm.
different communities related to PCD on social media. And I struggle with it because sometimes I don't feel sick enough. Um, or I
That's
don't feel, or I feel too sick, or I feel, I don't know. I just don't feel
like you're part of the
welcome, I
group.
guess. Like, I'm part of the group. Exactly. So I did sort of do, they ask everybody to do this when they join the group, a welcome post. So I shared a little bit about myself and my experience and what I try to do on a daily basis to feel better. And um, I was welcomed by most people, I would say, but there were a few commenters that said something about, oh, you must be in your Cinderella period. It'll get worse. Just wait,
Oh,
kind
what a
of
horrible
thing.
thing to hear.
I
And you're
know.
coming to a group for encouragement.
Mm, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't feel as though I had a place in that particular community. Not to say that they're that other people didn't find community there that had different symptoms or what have you, but I personally didn't feel like that was my place. I still haven't found my place, to be honest,
Mm.
as far as like a larger PCD community goes. The only person that I know personally who has PCD is my brother,
Mhm.
and he doesn't even really want to talk about it.
Okay,
So,
so it's a very different
um,
mindset to you about it.
he does, and he's very active as well. We both try our best to maintain a healthy lifestyle, but I was looking at my writing from the years around my diagnosis, 2020, 2021,
Yeah.
and I shared exactly what I mentioned earlier, just that in those broader communities, I personally don't feel welcomed. I feel bad like sharing that, hey, I ran a marathon. I feel pretty good most days.
Yeah.
It feels like insensitive. I don't know, because so many people
Also
are
a part of that
struggling.
community to celebrate that with you because I feel like that community
Yeah,
will understand what a huge feat that is.
sure. I know. I just like I always try to downplay it. Like, oh, I'm not that. Oh my gosh, can you hear my dog?